Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. Rick from European Motors here. Today what we're going to discuss is why you should buy a car with a V10 engine in it. If you actually think about the different choices that you have in terms of European cars for a V10 engine, you don't have many choices. BMW, of course, didn't make many V10 engines. You only have the E60 BMW M5, which I'm in right now. You have the E63 BMW M6. You also have, in terms of Audi, you have the S6 and you have the S8 as well. But other than that, you have Lamborghini with the Huracan and the Gallardo, and the Audi R8, the V10 version, of course, not the V8 version. And that's about it. That's really where you get. If you want to think extreme, we can think about the Porsche Carrera GT. But then again, that is a car that's worth more than $750,000, close to $1 million. And so that's something that most people, let's say, can't afford. And so I'm going to give you the reasons why I have a V10, and most likely why, if you have some money saved up and you're maybe hesitant and you're thinking, should I get a V10? Well, I think you probably should. And these are the reasons why. Number one, and that is the unique V10 experience. What I mean by that, if you really think about it, someone has a 6-cylinder engine. Most people think, okay, not bad. If people think V8, everyone automatically thinks, whoa, big engine, very, very cool. Now, when it depends, V12 is kind of different because when you go back into the 90s and the 80s and so forth, of course you had the supercars that were V12s like the Lamborghini Countaches and the Diablos and so forth. But if you have to think about it, you can also go BMW, the E31, the 8 Series. There was a 12-cylinder version, and the crazy thing about that car was that it wasn't super fast. It wasn't even a supercar. A lot of these Mercedes that you think about with the 12-cylinder engines as well, a lot of those are more like GT cars, more like you're cruising. It's not so much about speed unless you go the AMG S65 type route. But if you think about it, V12 doesn't give you the same concept or the same feeling as a V10. V10 gives you that race-inspired feeling. The reason is because BMW started that with their Sauger V10 engine, which they basically use that casting to make the engine that is in this car right now. So the experience that you have in any V10 car is completely unique to any other car you will ever buy, at least if you're in the V10 category. Again, it's not a V12, which is, again, the biggest engine you basically get minus the, of course, the Bugatti. But other than that, the experience in a V10 is just unique. It will never be the same. I drive this car and I've never driven any car like this and probably never will again. It is just so unique to this car and to the engine itself. Number two, and that is the engine. The configuration of 5 cylinders going one way and 5 cylinders going another way. Think about it. There's no evenness there. There's a little bit of roughness to the V10 engine. If you think about the 12, you have 6 and 6. If you think about the inline 6 in BMW, that's a very, very smooth engine. Now, that's why the V6 kind of is an E engine, and the V10 is kind of notorious for maintenance. Why? Because it doesn't have that evenness of motion. Of course, when you have 6 cylinders balancing each other out on one side, 6 on the other side, you get that even, very calm feel of a V12 engine. However, in the V10, you get that roughness, that grittiness that pretty much only that engine can give you. Number 3, you will never have this car again. What I mean is, if you buy a V10, most likely you will never have another V10 again. That's not because you don't like it or anything like that, but it is kind of like one of those experiences that you have to have one time in your life. It's very few and far between if someone, let's say, goes from an M5 to a Gallardo to a Huracan to, I don't know, an Audi R8. It is something that from a V10 you'll probably jump down to or drop down to a V8, maybe to a V12, but it's one of those experiences that, again, will probably happen once in your life, so might as well just do it. Number 4, the limited supply. I listed some of the cars that have the V10 engine, and that's what it is. There's a limited supply for these cars. And so if you find one, you kind of have to get your hands on one, because who knows how long they're going to be around. They're always made in limited production for the most part. The S6 and the S8s are relatively inexpensive right now, but again, they're in limited supply because people want them. They're picking them up. They're really inexpensive in terms of paying for them. They're a little notorious with the maintenance, but then again, there's not a lot of them out there. Think about all the V10 engines. I listed them in less than 30 seconds. It is really crazy how there's not many of them out there. I can't tell you how many people have met me that know that I have a V10 M5 and they have a better car than me, more expensive, but they're like, whoa, you have a V10? There's just something in the car community that they hail anyone who has a V10, and if you want to experience that, you're going to have to buy one of those cars for yourself. It is just something that between enthusiasts, we only understand. Again, the V12 is its own thing, but the V10 is, again, a rare engine configuration that if you have one, people look at you twice. And the last reason why you totally need to buy a V10 is the sound. I can't tell you how many times every single day that I drive this car that I'm still impressed with the sound of this car. Everyone who hears it tells me, whoa, that sounds like a Lamborghini. Well, because the configuration of a V10 engine is just so unique, it is so unlike what is out there, that its sound is just different. You can kind of pick it out between all the other cars. There's a very similar sound to the Gallardo, to the Huracan, to the Audi R8. Some people say, Jeremy Clarkson said, the V10 M5 actually sounds better than the Ferrari F430, which I have never been in a 430, but I can tell you I'm not surprised. The sound in this car is unlike anything you will ever hear. If you haven't heard it, or if you haven't been inside the car and have heard it under a tunnel, or just driving with narrow streets, it is so incredible. Honestly, it's worth the price of the car just to hear that sound, let me tell you. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. If you want to hear why you probably should not buy a V10 engine, because these are, again, the reasons why you should. If you want me to give you reasons why you should not, then let me know down in the comments below. We'll see you next time, and don't forget to drive safe.
Storm inside my head, it's getting me in trouble, baby.